They are the last of the 7 wonders of the ancient world still standing, silent stone mountains rising from the desert sand. For 4,500 years, the pyramids have posed a question to humanity, a riddle of purpose and scale that we are still trying to answer. They have been lighthouses for lost travelers, objects of divine reverence, canvases for conquerors' graffiti, and the ultimate prize for treasure hunters. But the true treasures of the pyramids are not the gold and jewels that were stolen from them millennia ago. The real treasures are the secrets they still hold within their stones, secrets of engineering, of astronomy, of the lives of the people who built them, and of a civilization's profound beliefs about life, death, and eternity. Tonight, we journey to the Giza Plateau and beyond to peel back the layers of sand and stone and uncover these hidden treasures. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Before a single triangular face ever touched the Egyptian sky, the story of the pyramid begins humbly in the sand and mud of the Nile Valley. To understand the genesis of these colossal structures, we cannot begin at Giza. We must travel back, further in time, to the very dawn of the Egyptian state, and look not at pyramids, but at the simpler tombs that preceded them. The ancient Egyptians, from the earliest periods of their civilization, held a profound and defining belief in the afterlife. Life on earth was a temporary, fleeting phase, a mere prelude to an eternal existence that mirrored the best aspects of their mortal lives. But this eternal life was not guaranteed. It depended on 2 crucial factors: the preservation of the physical body and the provision of a safe, permanent home for the soul, or more specifically, for the Ka, the life force. Of the individual dot in the pre-dynastic era, the dead were buried in simple pits dug into the desert sand. The hot, arid environment naturally desiccated the bodies, creating accidental mummies and perhaps sparking the very idea that physical preservation was possible. As society became more stratified and powerful elites emerged, these simple pit graves evolved. The deceased were surrounded with more grave goods, pottery, tools, and jewelry for use in the next world. To protect these valuables from thieves and the elements, the pits were lined with wood or mudbrick and roofed over. The final step was to pile a mound of sand and rubble on top to mark the location. This simple mound, a tumulus, was the most basic ancestor of the pyramid dot, with the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt and the beginning of the dynastic era around 3100 BC. Royal and noble burials became far more elaborate. The simple mound was formalized into a rectangular, flat-roofed structure with sloping sides, built from mudbrick. The Arabs who later arrived in Egypt called these structures mastabas, after the Arabic word for bench, which they resembled. The mastaba was a significant leap forward. It was a true house for eternity. Below ground, a deep shaft led to a burial chamber where the deceased lay in their coffin, surrounded by their possessions. Above ground, the solid rectangular structure provided protection and a focal point for the funerary cult. A niche in the side of the mastaba, which later evolved into a small chapel, contained a false door. This was a stone carving of a door through which the Ka of the deceased was believed to pass from the burial chamber into the world of the living to receive the daily food and drink offerings left by their relatives or priests. The Mastaba was the standard tomb for the elite for centuries, and they grew in size and complexity, often containing multiple rooms and decorated with scenes of daily life. For nearly 500 years, the Mastaba was the architectural pinnacle of the Egyptian funerary cult. But then, during the Third Dynasty, around 2650 BC, a pharaoh named Djoser came to the throne. Djoser was a powerful and innovative king, but his greatest legacy would be secured by his brilliant vizier and chief architect, a man named Imhotep. Imhotep was a true polymath, a physician, a priest, a scribe, and an engineer of genius, who would later be deified by the Egyptians as a god of medicine and wisdom. Djoser commissioned Imhotep to build his funerary complex at a new site on the high desert plateau of Saqqara. Initially, the plan was for a large, square mastaba, but one built not from traditional mudbrick, but entirely from stone. This was a revolutionary step in itself, creating a structure with a permanence and grandeur never before seen. But Imhotep was not satisfied. In a series of brilliant conceptual leaps, he decided to expand the tomb. Instead of a single mastaba, he built a smaller one on top of the first, then another on top of that, and another, until he had created a towering structure of 6 steps, reaching a height of nearly 200 feet. He had invented the pyramid. The step pyramid of Djoser is one of the most important structures in human history. It is the world's first large-scale stone building. It is not just a tomb. It is a monumental declaration of the king's divine power, a stairway to the heavens that the pharaoh's soul could literally climb to join the circumpolar stars, the imperishable ones that never set. The step pyramid was not a standalone monument. Imhotep surrounded it with a vast 37-acre complex, enclosed by a 30-foot-high limestone wall. This wall was designed to mimic the palace of the king in Memphis, with intricate recessed paneling. Within the enclosure, Imhotep built a series of dummy buildings, chapels, temples, and pavilions that were essentially solid stone replicas of the structures the king would need to perform his royal duties for all eternity. This was the setting for the Heist festival, a jubilee meant to magically rejuvenate the king's power, which he could now celebrate forever. The complex was a stone model of the Egyptian cosmos, with the pyramid at its center, linking the earth to the heavens. Below the pyramid, a labyrinthine network of tunnels and chambers, extending for over 3 miles, was carved out of the bedrock. At its heart was the king's burial vault, lined with granite, a silent, secure chamber for his eternal rest. The walls of some of these subterranean corridors were lined with beautiful blue faience tiles, meant to imitate the reed mats of the royal palace, a hidden treasure of artistry deep beneath the earth. The revolution sparked by Imhotep took another few generations to perfect. The pharaohs who followed Djoser attempted to build their own step pyramids with varying degrees of success. The pharaoh Huni, at the end of the Third Dynasty, began a pyramid at Medem, which was likely conceived as a step pyramid. It was his successor, Sneferu, the first king of the Fourth Dynasty and the father of Khufu, who would complete the transformation. Sneferu was the greatest pyramid builder in Egyptian history, commissioning not one, but 3 massive pyramids. At Medum, he oversaw the conversion of the step pyramid into the first ever true pyramid. The steps were filled in with stone, and a smooth outer casing of Tura limestone was applied. Unfortunately, the foundation was unstable, and the pyramid may have suffered a catastrophic collapse, leaving the ruined core we see today. Undeterred, Sneferu moved his court to Dashur and began another pyramid. This one, known as the Bent Pyramid, is a testament to the trial and error process of these ancient engineers. They began building at a steep angle of 54 degrees, but as the structure rose, signs of instability likely appeared. Cracks may have formed in the internal chambers. To avert another collapse, the builders were forced to change the angle of Ascent midway through construction to a much shallower 43 degrees, giving the pyramid its distinctive bent appearance. It is a beautiful monument, and it still retains much of its original polished limestone casing, giving us a glimpse of how these structures were meant to look. Still not satisfied, Sneferu commissioned a third pyramid just over a mile away. This was the North Pyramid, or the Red Pyramid, so named for the reddish hue of its core blocks. Here, the lessons of the past were fully applied. It was built from the ground up at the safe and successful 43-degree angle. It is the world's first successful true pyramid, a perfect, geometrically satisfying shape. Its internal chambers, with their magnificent corbelled ceilings, are masterpieces of architectural engineering. Sneferu had finally perfected the blueprint. He had created the perfect form, the pure, sun-ray-like shape that his son, Khufu, would take and elevate to a scale that would stagger the world for the next 4.5 millennia. The hidden treasure of the first pyramids was not gold, but knowledge, the hard-won, iterative knowledge of engineering, geometry, and logistics that made the wonders of Giza possible. When the great pyramid builder, Sneferu, passed into the afterlife, he left his son and successor, Khufu, a legacy of immense value. It was not a legacy of gold or territory alone, but one of knowledge, a perfected architectural blueprint, a highly experienced corps of architects and craftsmen, and a sophisticated state apparatus capable of mobilizing a nation. Khufu chose to leverage this inheritance on a new stage, a rocky plateau to the north that offered a commanding view of the capital city of Memphis. This site, known today as Giza, was not just a convenient location. It was a carefully selected, sacred landscape, a solid limestone foundation of the Mokattam Formation, geologically stable enough to support structures of unimaginable weight, and theologically positioned within sight of Heliopolis, the ancient center of the sun cult. It was here that Khufu, followed by his son Khafur and grandson Menkaure, would create the most famous and enduring architectural complex on the planet. The Giza Plateau is not merely a collection of 3 pyramids. It is a meticulously planned necropolis, a symphony in stone where every element, every temple, every causeway, every subsidiary tomb is placed in careful relationship to the others, to the path of the sun, and to the eternal stars. The true hidden treasure of Giza is this master plan, a cosmic map rendered in millions of tons of stone, designed to transform mortal kings into immortal gods. At the heart of the plateau, dominating the landscape and the imagination, is the Great Pyramid of Khufu. Upon its completion around 2560 BC, It was the tallest man-made structure on Earth, a title it would hold for an astonishing 3,800 years. Its statistics are so immense they border on the abstract. It is composed of an estimated 2.3 million blocks of stone, weighing on average 2.5 tons each, with some of the granite beams in its interior weighing as much as 80 tons. Its base covers over 13 acres, so precisely leveled that the difference in elevation between the corners is a matter of centimeters, and it is oriented to the 4 cardinal points with an accuracy that modern surveyors, with all their technology, would find challenging to replicate. This colossal structure did not stand in isolation. It was the sacred heart of a sprawling complex dedicated to the king's eternal cult. To the east of the pyramid stood a large mortuary temple. Though now mostly ruined, we know its floors were paved with black basalt, its walls were of limestone decorated with fine reliefs, and its pillars were of red granite. This is where the daily rituals and offerings for the dead king would have been performed by a dedicated college of priests. From this temple, a long, covered causeway, nearly half a mile in length, ran down the plateau to a second temple, the Valley Temple, which would have stood at the edge of the floodplain, connected to the Nile by a canal. This causeway was not a simple open path. It was an enclosed, tunnel-like corridor, its inner walls covered in painted reliefs, its roof likely featuring small slits to let in shafts of light. The experience of walking this causeway would have been a ritual transition, moving from the light and chaos of the living world into the sacred, ordered, and dimly lit realm of the dead king. The Valley Temple itself, now almost completely gone, acted as the ceremonial entrance to the entire complex. It was here that the king's body, in its coffin, would have been received after its final journey across the Nile, and where the final rites of purification and the opening of the mouth ceremony may have been completed before the body was carried up the causeway to its final resting place, surrounding the Great Pyramid on its eastern and western sides are neat, grid-like rows of smaller, flat-topped mastaba tombs. These were granted as a sign of supreme royal favor to the highest officials and nobles who had served Khufu in life, his viziers, his architects, his overseers, and his close family members. This created a miniature city of the dead, a silent, eternal court laid out in perfect order, allowing the elite of the kingdom to serve their king for all eternity, basking in the shadow of his divine monument. To the south of the main pyramid, 3 smaller pyramids stand in a neat line. These are often called the Queen's Pyramids, and they are thought to be the tombs of Khufu's wives and his mother Hetepheres. The 1925 discovery of a sealed, undisturbed burial shaft near one of these pyramids by the archaeologist George Reisner revealed the magnificent, gilded funerary equipment of Queen Hetepheres, including a stunning canopy, a bed, and chairs. Curiously, her sealed alabaster sarcophagus was empty. This mystery has led to speculation that her original tomb was robbed, and her son Khufu had her funerary goods moved to this secret, secure shaft at Giza for safekeeping, a testament to his filial piety. Khufu's son Khafur built the second pyramid at Giza. While it is slightly smaller than his father's monument, it appears taller from most angles because it was built on a higher point of the plateau. Khufu's pyramid is a treasure because it retains a portion of its original polished Tura limestone casing at its apex. This cap is a vital clue, a remnant that allows us to visualize how these monuments originally appeared, not as the tiered, sand-colored structures we see today, but as brilliant, seamless, gleaming white mountains that would have reflected the Egyptian sun with a blinding, divine intensity. Khufu's complex is the most complete at Giza. His valley temple, built from massive blocks of red granite and limestone, is remarkably well preserved. Its interior is a masterpiece of stark minimalist power, with 24 square granite pillars, one for each hour of the day, and smooth alabaster floors. It was here, buried in a pit in the floor, that the famous, magnificent diorite statue of Khufu was found, showing the king seated on his throne with the falcon god Horus protectively wrapping its wings around the back of his head, a perfect and powerful embodiment of divine kingship. The third and smallest of the main Giza pyramids belongs to Menkaure, Khufu's son. Though it is less than half the height of the others, its construction is notable for its ambitious use of red granite in its lower 16 courses. Granite, quarried in Aswan over 500 miles to the south, was far harder and more difficult to work with than limestone. Menkaure's plan to case a large portion of his pyramid in this prestigious, durable material was a statement of luxury, but it was never completed, perhaps due to his premature death. The story of Menkaure's pyramid, with its smaller size and unfinished casing, speaks to the waning resources of the dynasty. The age of truly colossal pyramid building, a period of perhaps only a century, was coming to an end. One of the most debated and fascinating secrets of the Giza Plateau is the precise meaning behind the layout of the three main pyramids. In the 1990s, author Robert Bauval proposed the Orion correlation theory, a hypothesis that captured the public imagination. Bauval suggested that the three pyramids were arranged on the ground as a terrestrial map of the three stars in Orion's belt. He argued that the slight offset of Menkaure's pyramid from the main diagonal line formed by Khufu's and Khufu's pyramids perfectly matches the offset of the third and dimmest star in the belt, Mentaka. Furthermore, he correlated the relative sizes of the pyramids with the apparent brightness of the three stars. The Egyptians associated the constellation of Orion with the great god of resurrection, Osiris, and a principal figure in their funerary. Beliefs. The idea that the pharaohs would create a literal image of Osiris's celestial home on the ground at Giza as a destination for their souls is a powerful and poetic one. While most Egyptologists remain skeptical of a direct, one-to-one correlation, pointing out discrepancies and the need to manipulate the star map to fit perfectly, the theory speaks to a deeper and undeniable truth. The layout of Giza was not accidental. It was a deliberate theological statement, written in stone on a scale that defies belief. The sky and the stars were central to Egyptian religion, and it is certain that these monuments were astronomically aligned with incredible precision, connecting the earthly realm of the dead king with his celestial destiny. The entire plateau was an engine of resurrection, a sacred landscape designed to transform the deceased pharaoh into a god and launch his soul into the heavens, a symphony of stone and stars. Of all the monuments on the Giza Plateau, indeed in the entire world, None holds more mystery and fascination than the Great Pyramid of Khufu. It is a structure that challenges our understanding of the ancient world, a masterpiece of engineering, mathematics, and logistics that continues to confound experts. For millennia, its secrets were sealed within its stone heart, but modern technology is beginning to peel back its layers, revealing a hidden treasure of architectural complexity and purpose that is far more valuable than any gold it once contained. The pyramid is not just a pile of stones. It is an intricate machine, a puzzle box of passages and chambers, whose true purpose we are only now beginning to grasp. To truly appreciate this wonder, we must journey beyond its overwhelming exterior and venture inside, through its claustrophobic passages, and into its enigmatic chambers. Before we enter, it is worth pausing to consider what is no longer there. The Great Pyramid today is a rough, tiered, sand-colored monument. But in Khufu's time, it was encased in over 144,000 blocks of gleaming, white Turid limestone polished to a mirror-like finish. The joints between these casing stones were so fine they were almost invisible. It would have appeared as a single, seamless, brilliant white mountain. At its very apex, some 481 feet high, sat the pyramidion, or capstone, a smaller, pyramid-shaped stone that may have been cased in electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver. At sunrise and sunset, this golden peak would have caught the first and last rays of the sun, appearing as a fiery star on the horizon, a beacon of divine light. This brilliant outer shell is now gone, stripped away in the Middle Ages to build the mosques and palaces of Cairo, leaving the core blocks exposed to the elements. The original entrance to the Great Pyramid is located on its north face, about 56 feet above the ground and offset slightly from the central axis. It was sealed after the king's burial and hidden behind the smooth limestone casing, its location lost for centuries. For nearly 2,000 years after the fall of the Old Kingdom, no one knew how to get inside. It was not until the 9th century A.D. that the ambitious Arab caliph, Al-Mamun, seeking the fabled treasures of the pharaohs, ordered his men to force their way in. Ignoring the legends that warned of curses and spirits, they chiseled a rough, horizontal tunnel straight into the pyramid's core. By a stroke of incredible luck, the vibrations from their heavy tools dislodged a stone in the ceiling of a nearby, unknown passage, which came crashing down. This revealed the pyramid's hidden internal network. Al-Mamun's crude tunnel is the one used by tourists today, and it leads directly to the junction of the pyramid's main corridors. From this junction, one passage slopes downward into the bedrock beneath the pyramid. This is the descending passage. It runs for over 345 feet at a steep, unrelenting angle of 26 degrees. The passage is a masterpiece of precision, but also a test of endurance. A tunnel just under 4 feet high that forces one to crouch for its entire length. It terminates in a rough, unfinished chamber, now known as the subterranean chamber, or the pit. The purpose of this chamber is one of the pyramid's greatest and most debated mysteries. Was it the original intended burial chamber, abandoned when the builders decided to place the tomb higher up within the pyramid's superstructure? Or did it serve some symbolic purpose, perhaps representing the underworld, the duat, or the watery abyss of none from which creation emerged? The presence of a deep, square pit in its floor, and a mysterious, dead-end passage leading south only add to the enigma. Back at the junction of the passages, a second corridor, the ascending passage, slopes upward at the same 26-degree angle. It was originally blocked by a series of 3 massive granite plugs, which Al-Mamun's men had to painstakingly bypass by quarrying through the softer limestone around them. The ascending passage is identical in size to the descending passage and continues for about 129 feet until it opens up dramatically into one of the most breathtaking architectural spaces of the ancient world, the Grand Gallery. To emerge from the cramped, low confines of the ascending passage into the soaring, cathedral-like space of the Grand Gallery is a truly awe-inspiring experience, a moment of architectural revelation. The gallery is a massive corbelled hall, over 153 feet long and soaring to a height of 29 feet. Its walls of polished limestone rise in 7 overlapping layers, each one projecting slightly further inward than the one below it. This creates a unique inverted V-shape that is not only visually stunning, but also a brilliant engineering solution designed to channel the immense pressure from the millions of tons of stone above away from the gallery and out into the pyramid's core. The precision of the stonework is almost beyond belief. Along the base of the walls, a series of ramps or benches run the length of the gallery, with 27 pairs of mysterious slots cut into them at regular intervals. The purpose of the Grand Gallery is hotly debated. Was it simply a magnificent ceremonial corridor leading to the king's chamber, designed to impress and humble all who entered? Or did it serve a functional purpose during the pyramid's construction, perhaps as a storage area for the massive granite blocks used to seal the passages, which were held in place by wooden beams inserted into the slots? Whatever its function, its effect is one of immense grandeur and power. A ceremonial highway leading to the very heart of the pyramid. At the top of the Grand Gallery, a short, low passage leads to the final burial chamber of King Khufu, the so-called King's Chamber. It is a stark, severe, and solemn room, a complete contrast to the soaring gallery that precedes it. It is a perfect rectangular prism, built entirely from massive blocks of red granite from Aswan. The precision of the construction is perfect. The stones are so tightly fitted that it is impossible to insert even a piece of paper between them. Inside this chamber sits the only object ever found in the Great Pyramid, a large, lidless, and completely undecorated granite sarcophagus. It is slightly wider than the entrance to the chamber, proving that it must have been placed inside as the pyramid was being built around it. The chamber is not located at the pyramid's geometric center, but is offset slightly to the south-west. Its purpose, however, is clear. This was the final resting place of the god King Khufu, the Holy of Holies in this man-made mountain. The king's chamber holds another incredible hidden secret. Above its flat granite ceiling, engineers in the 19th century discovered a series of 5 small, hidden compartments, stacked one on top of the other. Known as the relieving chambers, these were never intended to be seen by human eyes. They were a brilliant engineering solution to an enormous problem: how to protect the flat roof of the king's chamber from the crushing weight of the pyramid above it. The chambers, separated by massive granite beams, distribute the immense load away from the chamber and out into the pyramid's core. It was on the walls of these hidden chambers that workmen's graffiti was found, scrawled in red ochre paint, naming their work gangs. One of these names, the Friends of Khufu Gang, is one of the only places in the entire pyramid where the king's name is actually written, a personal human touch in this monument of gods. There are other mysteries that radiate from the very heart of the structure. Leading from both the king's chamber and the lower chamber, misleadingly named the queen's chamber, are 4 narrow shafts, each about 8 inches square. For a long time, these were believed to be ventilation shafts, but this theory is now discredited, as 2 of them do not reach the pyramid's exterior. The shafts are now believed to have a symbolic religious purpose. They are astronomical alignments, star shafts, designed as conduits for the king's soul to ascend to the heavens. The southern shaft of the king's chamber points directly to the constellation of Orion, the celestial form of Osiris, while the northern shaft points to the circumpolar stars, the imperishable ones. These shafts were the launch tubes for the king's final voyage. The most recent and exciting discoveries have come from the Scan Pyramids project, which has been using cosmic ray Mon radiography to non-invasively scan the pyramid's interior. 2017, they announced the discovery of a massive, previously unknown void located directly above the Grand Gallery. This big void, as it has been nicknamed, is at least 100 feet long and similar in cross-section to the Grand Gallery itself. Its purpose is completely unknown, and it remains the greatest hidden treasure yet to be explored. Is it another Grand Gallery, a hidden chamber, or simply an ingenious engineering feature? The Great Pyramid, it seems, is not yet finished with its secrets. It is a structure that both reveals the genius of its creators and conceals new mysteries, challenging each generation to look deeper and question what we think we know. At the eastern edge of the Giza Plateau, where the high desert escarpment gives way to the fertile valley, lies a creature of myth, mystery, and profound geological presence, the great Sphinx of Giza, known to the ancient Egyptians as Hormakhet, or Horus on the horizon, is arguably the most enigmatic and evocative statue ever created. It is a silent sentinel that has guarded the pyramids for 4.5 millennia, its weathered face staring eastwards, impassively watching the endless cycle of sunrise and sunset. This is not a monument built from assembled blocks, but a creature born from the land itself, a colossus carved from a single massive outcrop of living bedrock. It is an inseparable part of the Giza landscape, and for centuries it has been the subject of intense debate, romantic speculation, and rigorous scientific study. The secrets it holds are as profound and contested as those of the Great Stone, mountains that rise behind it. The scale of the Sphinx is monumental. It stretches for an impressive 240 feet from its outstretched paws to the tip of its tail, and stands 66 feet high from its base to the top of its head. The face alone is over 13 feet wide, and each eye is over 6 feet long. If it could stand up, it would be as long as a modern passenger jet. For most of its long and turbulent history, the Sphinx was not seen in its entirety. The shifting desert sands, blown by the seasonal Khamsin winds, would periodically engulf the statue, burying it up to its neck and leaving only its great head exposed, a surreal and lonely visage in the vast desert. This cycle of burial and excavation is a key part of its story. Several pharaohs, seeing the divine power in this ancient monument, undertook massive restoration projects to free it from the sand. The most famous of these was the New Kingdom pharaoh Thutmose IV, who ruled over 1,000 years after the Sphinx was created. Thutmose commemorated his great work on a large granite stela, now known as the Dream Stela, which he erected between the Sphinx's paws where it still stands today. The stela tells a charming and politically astute story. As a young prince, not yet destined for the throne, Thutmose went hunting in the desert near Giza. Tired from the chase, he fell asleep in the shadow of the Sphinx's head. The great statue, identifying itself as the god Hormeket, appeared to him in a dream. The god complained of the sand that was choking him and made the young prince a promise. If Thutmose would clear away the sand and restore his monument, he would ensure that Thutmose would become the next king of Egypt, wearing the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. Thutmose fulfilled his promise, undertaking a massive excavation project, and, as the prophecy foretold, he became king. This tale is a beautiful illustration of how even the ancient Egyptians of the New Kingdom saw the Sphinx as an ancient and powerful deity, a source of divine oracle and royal legitimacy. The greatest and most persistent mystery of the Sphinx has always been its identity and original purpose. The consensus among mainstream Egyptologists is that the face of the Sphinx is a portrait of the pharaoh Khufu, the builder of the second pyramid at Giza. The evidence for this is largely circumstantial, but compelling. The Sphinx is located directly adjacent to the stone causeway leading from Khufu's Valley Temple to his mortuary temple. This integrated placement suggests it was carved as part of Khufu's overall pyramid complex. The style of Vanana's headdress and the presence of the royal cobra, or uraeus, on its brow, though now broken off, clearly identify the head as that of a king. By merging the portrait of the king with the body of a lion, the most powerful and ferocious predator known to the Egyptians, the statue created a potent symbol of the pharaoh as a divine warrior, the protector of his own necropolis, eternally watchful and ready to destroy the enemies of Egypt. It was a Sheshep-Ankh, a living image of the god king, a fusion of his human identity and his divine role. However, this identification is not without its detractors. Some researchers have pointed to stylistic differences between the face of the Sphinx and the known, confirmed statues of Khufu, arguing that the Sphinx's face is broader and more stylized. This has led to suggestions that the face may belong to Khufu's father, Khufu, or even his less-known brother and predecessor, Djenefer. These theories, however, struggle to explain the statue's perfect integration into Khufu's complex. Another of the Sphinx's great secrets is the story of its geological creation. It was not built in a location chosen for aesthetic value, but one dictated by geology and necessity. The Giza Plateau is composed of layers of limestone of varying quality, remnants of an ancient seabed. The Sphinx was carved from a large knoll, or outcrop that was left over from the massive quarrying operations that produced the core blocks for Khufu's Great Pyramid. Khufu's engineers, rather than laboriously removing this large rock, saw an opportunity within it. They cleverly carved the body of the lion from the softer, poor or quality layers of limestone and reserved the harder, more durable layer at the top for the head, which required finer detail, and greater longevity. The massive limestone blocks removed from around the Sphinx's body were not discarded. They were used as the core blocks for the two temples that stand directly in front of it. This is a crucial piece of archaeological evidence. The Sphinx and its temples were created as a single, integrated project from the same stone. At the same time, these two temples are hidden treasures in their own right, often overlooked by visitors who are understandably captivated by the great statue itself. The first is the Sphinx Temple, which sits directly in front of the Sphinx's paws. Though now heavily ruined, it was a massive structure, similar in design to the classic Old Kingdom mortuary temples, with a central courtyard surrounded by massive pillars and two sanctuaries. It was likely used for rituals related to the worship of the Sphinx in its solar aspect. Adjacent to it, and forming part of the same complex, is Khufu's Valley Temple, one of the best preserved temples of the Old Kingdom. Built from colossal limestone core blocks, encased inside and out with polished red granite from Aswan, its stark geometric interior is a masterpiece of architectural power. The discovery of the magnificent diorite statue of Khufu within its halls confirms its connection to the king. The temples, built from the very stone that once encased the Sphinx's body, tie the statue inextricably to the architectural and religious plan of Khufu's reign. Perhaps the most fiery and controversial debate surrounding the Sphinx concerns its age. In the early 1990s, author and geologist Robert Schoch put forward a radical hypothesis. He argued that the deep vertical weathering and erosion patterns visible on the body of the Sphinx and on the walls of its enclosure were not caused by wind and sand as traditionally believed, but by significant rainfall over a long period. Since the climate of Egypt has been hyper-arid for the last 5,000 years, Schoch argued that the Sphinx must date back to a much earlier, wetter period, perhaps as far back as 7,000 or 10,000 BC, predating the Egyptian civilization as we know it. This theory of a much older Sphinx, carved by a lost civilization, has been widely embraced by alternative history proponents. However, the vast majority of geologists and Egyptologists refute this hypothesis. They argue that the poor quality of the limestone layers in the Sphinx's body, which are soft and porous, are highly susceptible to a different kind of water damage known as haloclasty or salt weathering. Morning dew and atmospheric moisture can be absorbed by the porous limestone. As the sun heats the rock, the water evaporates, leaving behind salt crystals. These crystals expand, breaking the stone apart from the inside out, a process that can create deep fissures that mimic rainfall erosion. Furthermore, the undeniable archaeological context, the Sphinx's direct connection to the Khufu causeway, and the use of the excavated blocks to build 4th Dynasty-style temples, firmly anchors the monument in the time of Khufu. And what of the fabled hidden treasures of the Sphinx? Legends and esoteric speculations have swirled for centuries about secret chambers, hidden libraries, and lost technologies concealed beneath the great statue. The American psychic Edgar Cayce famously predicted in the 1930s that a haul of records from the lost civilization of Atlantis would be discovered beneath the Sphinx's paws around the year 1998. These romantic notions have fueled countless speculative books and documentaries. However, modern scientific surveys have found no evidence to support these claims. Multiple studies using ground-penetrating radar, seismic surveys, and acoustic soundings have revealed the geology of the bedrock beneath the Sphinx. They have found natural fissures, small cavities, and variations in the rock density, but no large man-made chambers or halls. The true treasures of the Sphinx are not hidden below it, but are visible for all to see. The treasure of its artistry, the secret of its purpose as a symbol of divine kingship, and the enduring, profound mystery that is etched into its ancient, silent, and weathered face. For centuries, the prevailing image of the men who built the pyramids was one of abject misery and brutal oppression. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing his histories more than 2,000 years after the Giza pyramids were completed, painted a vivid and enduring picture of 100,000 slaves toiling under the lash of cruel taskmasters, a narrative that was later cemented in the popular imagination by the grand epics of Hollywood. This vision of a kingdom built upon the suffering of a vast enslaved population was accepted as historical fact for generations. But one of the greatest treasures to be uncovered from the sands of Giza has not been gold or a hidden chamber, but the truth. Archaeological discoveries over the past few decades have systematically and completely overturned this old myth, revealing a secret that is far more complex and compelling. The pyramids were built by a dedicated, well-fed, highly organized, and skilled workforce of free Egyptian citizens. The hidden treasure is their story, a story of human ingenuity, social organization, and national pride. The breakthrough that revolutionized our understanding came in the late 1980s and early 1990s. A team led by the renowned Egyptologist Dr. Zahi Hawass, working in conjunction with his American colleague Dr. Mark Lenner of the Ancient Egypt Research Associates, ERA, began to excavate a sprawling settlement located just south of the Giza Plateau near a massive stone wall known as the Wall of the Crow. This was not the slave camp of popular imagination. This was a lost city, a planned urban center built specifically to house the thousands of workers who constructed the pyramids of Khufu and Menkaure. This city, which Lenner has dubbed the largest archaeological site in the 3rd millennium BC, covers a vast area and is remarkably well preserved beneath the sand. Its careful excavation has provided an unprecedented window into the lives of the builders. The layout of the city reveals a highly organized and stratified community, a microcosm of the Egyptian state itself. The main part of the settlement consists of long, gallery-like barracks. These are not dungeons or squalid huts, but large, well-constructed buildings of mudbrick laid out on a formal grid plan. Each gallery contains sleeping areas with raised platforms, a common space for cooking with hearths and ovens, and a profusion of pottery for eating and drinking. Lenner's team has calculated that these galleries could have housed between 1,600 and 2,000 workers at a time. This was likely the home of the rotating, conscripted labor force. These were not permanent residents, but seasonal workers, farmers who came from villages all over Egypt to work on the national project during the season of Akhet, the annual inundation of the Nile, when the floodwaters covered their fields. From roughly July to October, agricultural work was impossible. The state, in a brilliant move of central planning, conscripted this massive idle workforce for its monumental construction projects. This was a form of national service, a tax paid not in coin, but in labor, and it would have fostered a sense of national identity and participation in the kingdom's most sacred endeavor. The food that sustained this massive workforce was a key part of the discovery, and it definitively shattered the slave myth. Archaeologists at the site have uncovered industrial-scale food production facilities. There are massive bakeries with rows of large, bell-shaped bread molds capable of producing thousands of loaves a day. They have found fish processing facilities with cutting boards and heaps of fish bones. Most importantly, they have analyzed the enormous quantities of animal bones discarded in the city's middens. The analysis of these faunal remains, conducted by specialists like Dr. Richard Redding, revealed another stunning truth. The workers were eating vast amounts of beef, mutton, and goat meat. Beef, in particular, was a high-status food in ancient Egypt, a luxury not often available to the common farmer. The sheer number of cattle bones found at the site indicates that prime cuts from young, healthy animals were being consumed in huge quantities. This was not the diet of slaves. This was a high-protein diet deliberately designed by the state to keep its workforce strong, healthy, and productive. The workers were being paid in rations of bread, beer, and high-quality meat. Adjacent to the main barracks, the archaeologists found evidence of a more permanent settlement with a different character. There were larger individual houses for the administrators, the scribes who kept the meticulous records of work and supplies, and the overseers who managed the project. And, crucially, there were workshops for the skilled craftsmen, the stonemasons, coppersmiths who forged and sharpened the tools, and the artisans who would have created the fine reliefs and statues. These were the true masters, the men who possessed the specialized knowledge and skills passed down through generations. They lived at Giza year-round with their families, forming the permanent core of the workforce. They would have overseen the project, trained the temporary levies, and performed the most difficult and intricate tasks that required years of experience. Perhaps the most poignant and humanizing discovery of all was the workers' cemetery. Located on a hillside overlooking the city, a series of simple but dignified tombs were found. Unlike slaves who would have been buried unceremoniously in unmarked mass graves, these workers were buried with honor and care, in mudbrick and stone Mastaba style, tombs with small chapels for offerings. Their bodies were oriented towards the west, the land of the dead, and some showed signs of mummification. They were buried with grave goods pottery containing food and drink, tools of their trade, and personal ornaments for use in the afterlife. This demonstrates that they were not disposable laborers, but respected individuals who held the same complex beliefs about eternal life as the pharaohs they served. The tombs themselves have provided a wealth of personal information, a treasure of names and titles. The inscriptions on the walls give us the identities of the men buried within: the overseer of the masonry, the director of the draftsmen, the inspector of the craftsmen. These were proud professionals, honored for their craft and their contribution to the sacred project. Furthermore, the skeletal remains tell a powerful and visceral story of their lives. Examination by doctors and physical anthropologists has revealed the immense physical toll of the work. The skeletons show high rates of arthritis in the spine and knees from a lifetime of hauling heavy loads. There are crushed fingers, broken bones, and even amputated limbs. But there is also clear and astonishing evidence of expert medical care. Skeletons have been found with cleanly set and fully healed broken bones. One individual had a leg amputated and survived for years afterward. Another skull shows evidence of successful brain surgery, where a piece of the cranium was removed, and the bone shows signs of healing around the edges. This is not the kind of care a society would afford to a disposable slave population. These were highly valued, skilled workers. If they were injured on the job, the state's physicians would patch them up and get them back to work. The true secret of the pyramid's construction, then, is not one of alien technology or cruel oppression. It was a triumph of human organization and project management. A society under the command of a divine king and managed by a literate bureaucracy mobilized its entire population to achieve a common goal. The hidden treasure revealed by the workers' city is the human story behind the stone mountains. The pyramids were built by Egyptians for Egyptians as a national project of immense religious and cultural significance. They stand as a testament, not to the power of the lash, but to the incredible power of a unified society, a tribute to the skill, dedication, and spirit of tens of thousands of ordinary people who came together to create something truly extraordinary. For all their imposing exterior grandeur, the pyramids of the Fourth Dynasty, the magnificent monuments of Sneferu, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure are internally austere, powerful, and almost entirely silent. Their polished limestone and hard granite walls are bare, containing no inscriptions, no decorations, and no explicit clues as to the rituals and beliefs that animated them. This monumental silence created a void that for centuries was filled with speculation and mystery. But in 1881, a discovery was made at the ancient necropolis of Saqqara that would give a voice to the pyramids and change our understanding of Egyptian funerary ideology forever. A team led by the French Egyptologist Gaston Maspero entered a smaller, unassuming pyramid belonging to a late Old Kingdom pharaoh named Unas. Inside, they were met with an astonishing sight. The walls of the antechamber and burial chamber were not bare. They were covered from floor to ceiling in vertical columns of finely carved, blue-painted hieroglyphs. This was the first discovery of the pyramid texts, the oldest and most extensive collection of religious writings known to humanity, and one of the greatest intellectual treasures ever to be recovered from the ancient world. The pyramid texts are a vast corpus of over 800 individual spells, hymns, prayers, and incantations, which Egyptologists refer to as utterances. Their discovery in the Pyramid of Unas, who ruled at the end of the Fifth Dynasty around 2350 BC, was just the beginning. Similar, though not identical, texts were soon found in the pyramids of his successors from the Sixth Dynasty, such as Teti, Pepii, Merenra, and even in the pyramids of several queens of the period. Each pyramid contains a different selection and arrangement of the spells, suggesting they were drawn from a larger body of religious literature that had likely existed in oral traditions or unperishable papyrus scrolls for centuries before, finally being carved in eternal stone. These texts were not intended for the living. They were a secret, powerful script, sealed within the darkness of the tomb, meant to be read or recited by the soul of the deceased pharaoh. Their purpose was singular and vital, to provide the king with the magical knowledge necessary to ensure his successful resurrection and his safe ascent into the heavens, to take his rightful place among the gods. The language of the pyramid texts is archaic, poetic, intensely vivid, and often obscure to modern scholars. It is filled with complex puns, mythological allusions, and powerful evocative imagery that speaks to a primal and deeply felt religious experience. The spells provide a comprehensive magical toolkit for the king to use on his perilous journey through the afterlife. They offer powerful protection from the many hostile forces that might try to impede his progress. There are numerous spells to ward off snakes, scorpions, and other dangerous creatures that were a real threat in the desert landscape and were imagined to be even more so in the underworld. One spell is a direct incantation against snakes. The serpent is for the sky. The centipede of Horus is for the earth. The serpent which has come forth from the earth is fallen. The flame which has come forth from the nun is fallen. Fall, O flame of the serpent. The texts also provide the passwords and knowledge needed to navigate the various gates and guardians of the Duat, or underworld. A central theme of the texts is the power of transformation. The king is not a passive soul hoping for salvation. He is an active agent in his own transfiguration. Spells give him the power to shapeshift, to take on the attributes of various powerful animals. He can fly as a divine falcon, soaring into the sky. He can run with the speed of a jackal, or swim the celestial waters as a crocodile. He can become a being of pure light. The texts are filled with imagery of flight and illumination. The king is a flame, moving before the wind to the ends of Thesky and the ends of the earth. He flies who flies. This King Pepe flies away from you, the mortals. He is not on earth, he is in the sky. Crucially, the texts cement the king's identification with the great gods of the Egyptian pantheon, ensuring his rebirth. The most important of these identifications is with Osiris, the mythical king of Egypt, who was murdered and dismembered by his jealous brother, Set. His loyal wife Isis painstakingly reassembled his body, and through her powerful magic resurrected him to become the ruler of the underworld. The pyramid texts explicitly identify the deceased pharaoh with Osiris, guaranteeing his own resurrection. One of the most famous refrains repeated in many of the pyramids is a powerful declaration of life over death. O king, you have not departed dead, you have departed living. Rise up, O Teti, you shall not die. The king is not dead, but has become an Osiris, and just as Osiris was resurrected by the gods, so too will the pharaoh be reborn into eternal life. But the king's ultimate destiny was not just to rule the underworld. His primary goal was to ascend to the heavens and join the supreme god of the old kingdom, the sun god Re, on his daily journey across the sky. The pyramid texts are a veritable instruction manual for this celestial ascent. They provide a multitude of ways for the king to achieve this. He can climb a great ladder, the ladder of the gods, which will be lowered for him from the sky. He can be carried aloft on the fragrant smoke of incense burned by the priests in his temple. He can be swept up by a great storm, or he can simply fly up as a divine bird. Once in the sky, the pharaoh would join the crew of the solar bark, the great ship that carried Rhea across the heavens by day and through the dangerous underworld by night. The king would not be a mere passenger. He would be an active participant in the cosmic order, serving as Ra's scribe, his rower, or his herald. He would help Re fight off the great serpent Apep, the embodiment of chaos, who tried to swallow the sun each night. By participating in this eternal cycle of sunrise and sunset, of the victory of order over chaos, the king himself became a part of that eternal rhythm. Another primary celestial destination for the king was the northern sky, home of the circumpolar stars. These stars, which never set below the horizon, were known to the Egyptians as the Ikemosek, the imperishable ones. The king's soul aspired to become one of them, a fixed and eternal point of light, forever watching over his kingdom on earth. The pyramid texts also give us an extraordinary, if fragmented, insight into the deep history of Egyptian mythology. We learn about gods and goddesses whose names appear nowhere else. We see the germs of religious ideas that would later be developed and systematized in the coffin texts of the Middle Kingdom and the famous Book of the Dead of the New Kingdom. For example, the concept of a final judgment, where the deceased's heart is weighed against the feather of truth, is not explicitly present in the pyramid texts, but there are clear precursors to the negative confession, where the deceased must declare his innocence from a list of sins. One spell states, "The king has not spoken evil of his father. The king has not spoken evil of his mother." One of the most dramatic, violent, and powerful sections of the entire corpus is the so-called cannibal hymn, found in the Pyramid of Unas. This terrifying and extraordinary text describes the king achieving ultimate power by hunting, cooking, and literally eating the gods themselves, thereby absorbing their strength, their knowledge, and their magic. Unas is the bull of heaven, the hymn proclaims, who rages in his heart, who lives on the being of every god, who eats their entrails when they come, their bodies full of magic from the island of flame. It is Unas who eats their magic, who swallows their spirits. Their great ones are for his morning meal, their middle ones for his evening meal, their little ones for his night meal. While it is almost certain that this was purely symbolic and not a reflection of any actual ritual cannibalism, the hymn is a raw and potent expression of the pharaoh's absolute power and his ambition to become the supreme being in the cosmos. The discovery of the pyramid texts was a revolution. It gave a voice to the silent monuments of the old kingdom and opened a direct window into the complex spiritual and intellectual world of the ancient Egyptians. It revealed that the pyramids were not just tombs designed to protect a body. They were complex theological machines, resurrection devices designed to transform the mortal king into an eternal celestial god. The hieroglyphs that covered the walls of these burial chambers were the operating manual for this machine, a hidden treasure of incalculable value, a library of spells written in stone, providing the words of power that would echo in the darkness of the tomb and guide the pharaoh's soul on its final glorious journey home to the stars. The colossal pyramids of the Fourth Dynasty at Giza represent the absolute zenith of pyramid building, a peak of architectural perfection and resource mobilization that would never be reached again. For many, the story of the pyramids ends there, in the shadow of Khufu and Khafre. But to stop at Giza is to miss the fascinating and revealing final chapters of the Old Kingdom. The pharaohs of the 5th and 6th dynasties continued to build pyramids for another 2 centuries. But these monuments tell a very different and equally important story. They are the forgotten pyramids, located primarily at the sites of Abusir and Saqqara, and they are a hidden treasure of historical information. Though smaller and far less perfectly constructed than their Giza counterparts, these later pyramids and their associated temples reveal a crucial shift in religious ideology, a new flourishing of artistic detail, and the subtle but undeniable signs of a dynasty's slow, inexorable decline. The first pharaoh of the 5th dynasty, Userkaf, chose to build his pyramid complex at Saqqara, right next to Djoser's ancient step pyramid. From the outside, his pyramid is unassuming, a small, now ruined mound. But Userkaf also built something new and highly significant that signaled a profound change in the religious landscape. Several miles away, at a site called Abusir, he constructed a dedicated sun temple. This was a completely new type of monument, separate from the king's funerary complex, and its main purpose was the worship of the sun god, Re. The temple was centered around a massive, squat obelisk known as a benben, which was a sacred stone symbol of the sun god, representing the primordial mound of creation upon which the first rays of the sun fell. The construction of a separate grand temple dedicated to Ra, in addition to the traditional pyramid complex, marks a major ideological shift. The cult of the sun god Ra, whose main center of worship was at Heliopolis, had grown immensely powerful. The pharaohs of the 5th dynasty no longer presented themselves as the supreme god on earth in the manner of Khufu, but rather as the sons of Er. This is reflected in their names, as many of them incorporated Ra into their own royal names, like Sehir, Neferker, and Nayuser. For the next century, the kings of this dynasty would pour immense resources into building 2 major monuments, a pyramid for their own afterlife, and a sun temple for the glory of their father, Ra. Userkaf's successors moved their funerary monuments north to Abusir, creating a new royal necropolis. The pyramids they built here are a study in contrast with those at Giza. They are significantly smaller, and more importantly, they were constructed with a much simpler, faster, and less durable technique. Instead of the millions of massive, well-cut limestone blocks that form the stable core of the Giza pyramids, the core of these Abusir pyramids was made of a central stone framework, with the gaps filled in with loose rubble, sand, and mud. This less stable core was then concealed by a fine outer casing of Tura limestone, which made it look on the surface like a true pyramid. This method was far faster and cheaper, but it meant that once the valuable outer casing was stripped away in later centuries for reuse in other building projects, the rubble core quickly crumbled, leaving the ruined mound-like structures we see today. This change in construction likely reflects a shift in resources, more wealth being directed to the sun temples, and perhaps a decline in the absolute economic power of the king. But what these pyramids lack in external grandeur, they more than make up for in the stunning beauty and historical significance of their associated temples. While the Giza temples are characterized by their colossal scale and austere, minimalist power, the temples at Abusir were decorated with an explosion of vibrant, detailed, and exquisitely carved reliefs. The walls of the mortuary and valley Temples of kings like Sahir and Nayuser were covered in painted carvings, depicting every aspect of royal life and the natural world in unprecedented detail. These reliefs are an invaluable treasure, a historical and artistic record of the Old Kingdom that is far more detailed and lively than anything found at Giza. In Sahir's complex, we find magnificent scenes of Egyptian ships returning from naval expeditions to the coast of the Levant, their crews including captured Syrian bears. There are scenes of the king receiving tribute from Libyan chieftains. Other walls depict the king hunting in the desert and fowling in the marshes, not as a symbol of chaotic power like at Giza, but as a celebration of the bounty of the land. The level of detail in the depiction of animals, birds, and fish is extraordinary. These reliefs are a historical document in stone, giving us an intimate look into the court life, foreign policy, and economy of the Fifth Dynasty. The pyramid of Neferkare-Kakai at Abusir yielded another treasure of a completely different kind, the Abusir papyri. During excavations in the late 19th century, a massive collection of administrative documents, part of the temple's official archive, was discovered. Written in the cursive hieratic script on fragile papyrus, these documents provide an unprecedented behind-the-scenes look at the daily running of a pyramid temple. They are the meticulous records of the temple bureaucracy, duty rosters for the different shifts of priests, known as files, inventories of temple equipment from golden vessels to linen robes, and detailed accounts of the daily offerings of bread, beer, meat, and other goods. They contain letters, memos, and legal disputes between officials. This archive is a treasure of economic and social information, transforming these ruins from dead stones into living institutions, populated by real people with schedules, salaries, responsibilities, and even workplace grievances. As the Old Kingdom progressed into the Sixth Dynasty, the power of the central government continued to wane. The provincial governors or nomarchs grew more powerful and independent, treating their provinces as personal fiefdoms, and the resources flowing to the king's court in Memphis diminished. This decline is directly reflected in the pyramids of the period, which are even smaller and more hastily built. The last great pharaoh of the Old Kingdom, Pepi II, who is credited with an astonishingly long reign of over 90 years, built his pyramid at Saqqara. While its construction is relatively poor, it is significant because his 3 wives were buried in small subsidiary pyramids nearby, each with its own chapel and complex. These small pyramids of the queens are beautifully decorated, and, significantly, contain their own versions of the pyramid texts. This extension of a royal funerary privilege to someone other than the king is a clear sign of the democratization of the afterlife, a trend that would accelerate in the ensuing First Intermediate period, when wealthy nobles would begin to adopt spells and rituals once reserved for royalty. It was in these later pyramids, beginning with Unas at the end of the Fifth Dynasty, that the pyramid texts themselves first appeared carved in stone. The decision to inscribe these sacred spells directly onto the walls of the burial chamber is itself a telling sign of the changing times. Perhaps as the king's absolute worldly power declined, there was a greater need to rely on the explicit and permanent power of magic and text to ensure his divinity in the next life. The treasures of these pyramids were not external displays of power meant to awe the living, but internal, textual, and artistic secrets, meant only for the eyes of the gods and the soul of the king. The story of these forgotten pyramids is the story of the end of an era. They chart the gradual decline of the centralized power that made Giza possible and reflect a profound shift in religious focus towards the sun god Ra. Yet they are not monuments of failure. They are a treasure trove of art, text, and history, providing a more nuanced and detailed picture of the old kingdom, a civilization in transition. One of the greatest and most enduring mysteries of the pyramids is also one of the most basic and profound. Why were they found empty? For centuries, adventurers, explorers, and archaeologists have breached the entrances of these magnificent structures, their minds filled with visions of chambers, overflowing with the unimaginable treasures of the pharaohs, only to be met with silent, dusty chambers, broken pottery, and empty, lidless sarcophagi. The answer is simple, yet it opens a window into a hidden world of crime, desperation, corruption, and social upheaval in ancient Egypt. The pyramids were empty because they had been systematically and thoroughly robbed. The great secret of the pyramids is that they were the targets of the greatest heists in history, a continuous tradition of tomb robbery that began almost as soon as the tombs were sealed and has continued for over 4 millennia. The story of the tomb robbers is a hidden treasure of social history, revealing the pragmatic and often desperate other side of the reverent, God-fearing society we see in the official art. The motivation for tomb robbery was immense and multifaceted. The pharaohs and nobles were buried with a staggering array of valuable objects, deemed necessary for a comfortable and high-status existence in the afterlife. This included not just the iconic gold and jewelry, but also furniture made of expensive and exotic woods like cedar and ebony, inlaid with ivory and faience. There were chests filled with fine linen garments, alabaster jars containing precious oils and perfumes, and tools and weapons made of valuable copper and bronze. To a poor farmer or craftsman struggling to survive, a single royal tomb contained more wealth than they could ever hope to earn in a dozen lifetimes. The temptation was overwhelming. Furthermore, the pyramids themselves acted as giant advertisements. Their very size, their prominence on the landscape, and their association with the wealthiest individuals in the kingdom screamed, "Treasure is here." The royal builders went to extraordinary lengths to protect the burials, incorporating complex internal layouts with dead-end passages, concealed entrances, and most importantly, massive granite portcullis blocks, some weighing many tons, designed to slide down and seal the chambers forever. But these ingenious security measures ultimately proved to be little more than a temporary puzzle for determined thieves. The first major wave of robberies likely happened very soon after the end of the Pyramid Age, during the period of social and political collapse known as the First Intermediate Period. During this time, the authority of the central government disintegrated, and Egypt was racked by famine, civil war, and chaos. With no strong king to protect the royal necropolises, and with the authority of the long-dead pharaohs no longer feared or respected, local gangs would have had free rein to attack the sacred burial grounds at Giza, Saqqara, and Abusa. These were not simple smash-and-grab jobs. The robbers were often highly organized and crucially possessed inside knowledge. It is almost certain that many of the earliest tomb robbers were the very artisans and masons who had built the tombs, or their descendants. Who else would know the precise location of a sealed entrance hidden behind the casing stones? Who else would understand the layout of the internal passages and know how to bypass the granite plugs? Their skills in quarrying and stonework made them uniquely qualified to deconstruct the very monuments they had helped to create. The techniques of the robbers were as ingenious as those of the builders. They would often avoid the heavily fortified main entrances and instead tunnel their way through the softer limestone core of the pyramid. This allowed them to bypass the granite plugs and portcullises that blocked the official route. This required skill, time, a sophisticated understanding of the pyramid's internal structure, and a great deal of courage to work in the cramped, dark, and dangerous tunnels. Once inside, they would work by the dim, smoky light of oil lamps, their main goal being to reach the burial chamber. There they would use levers and brute force to pry open the heavy granite lid of the royal sarcophagus. Their ultimate prize was the king's mummy itself, which would have been covered in a treasure trove of valuable items: a golden funerary mask, a broad collar of gold and semi-precious stones, and dozens of gold amulets wrapped within the linen bandages. After stripping the mummy, the thieves would take the treasures, break them up, melt the gold and silver down into easily transportable and untraceable ingots, and sell the gems and other materials on a thriving black market. Our most detailed. An explicit knowledge of the world of the tomb robbers comes from the New Kingdom, particularly from a series of remarkable papyri discovered at Thebes. These documents, such as the famous Papyrus Meyer B and Papyrus Abbott, are the official court transcripts from the trials of tomb robbers who were caught plundering the royal and private tombs in the Valley of the Kings around 1100 BC, although these trials relate to the rock-cut tombs of a later period. The methods, organization, and social dynamics of the thieves provide a blueprint for understanding the robberies of the Old Kingdom pyramids. The confessions recorded in these papyri, often extracted under torture, are a treasure trove of information. In one stunningly detailed confession, a quarryman named Amenpanufer describes how he and his gang broke into the pyramid tomb of the 17th Dynasty Pharaoh Sob-Kamsaf II. He states, "We went to rob the tombs in accordance with our regular habit, and we found the pyramid of King Sob-Kamsaf. We took our copper tools, and we forced a way into the pyramid of this king through its innermost part. We found its underground chambers, and we took lighted candles in our hands and went down. We broke through the plaster and found the god, the king, lying at the back of his burial place. And we found the burial place of Queen Nubkas, his queen, situated next to him. We opened their sarcophagi and their coffins in which they were. We found the noble mummy of this king equipped with a falcon. A large number of amulets and jewels of gold were upon his neck, and his headpiece of gold was upon him. The noble mummy of this king was completely bedecked with gold, and his coffins were adorned with gold and with silver inside and out, and inlaid with all kinds of precious stones." The confession goes on to detail how they stripped the mummies of every valuable item, stole the fine furniture, set fire to the now valueless coffins and linens to destroy the evidence, and then divided the loot into shares. It is a chilling, first-hand account of the complete desecration of a royal burial. The papyri also reveal that the tomb-robbing rings were often complex, community-based operations involving a wide cross-section of society. The gangs included everyone from stonecutters and coppersmiths to farmers, water carriers, and even the priests from the mortuary temples, who were supposed to be guarding the very tombs they were helping to plunder. The corruption often went all the way to the top of local society. Mayors, scribes, and chiefs of police were frequently implicated, either for taking bribes to look the other way or for actively taking a share of the profits. The trials themselves were often brutal affairs. The accused were subjected to a form of interrogation known as the bastinado, where they were beaten with rods on the soles of their feet and the palms of their hands to extract confessions. The punishment for those found guilty was the most severe the state could deliver: impalement on a sharpened stake, a gruesome and very public execution designed to deter others. But even this terrible fate was often not enough to stop the robberies, especially during times of economic hardship. The secrets of the tomb robbers reveal a darker, more pragmatic side of ancient Egyptian society. They show that reverence for the gods and the king could be easily overshadowed by economic desperation and timeless human greed. They demonstrate that for every group of people who dedicated their lives to building these eternal houses, there was another group dedicated to tearing them apart for profit. This age-old battle between the tomb builders and the tomb robbers is one of the great hidden narratives of Egyptian history, a 4,000-year-old story of crime and consequence, whose final chapter was the silent, empty chambers that greet us today. For all the mysteries contained within the stone mass of the Great Pyramid, and for all the treasures that were plundered from it, one of its most breathtaking and significant treasures lay perfectly hidden and undisturbed right next to it, buried in a sealed pit preserved for over 4,500 years in the dry desert air. This treasure was not gold, lapis lazuli, or a royal diadem, but something far more rare, evocative, and scientifically important: an intact, full-sized ship, a majestic vessel of Lebanese cedar, now known as Khufu's solar boat. Its discovery in 1954 is one of the greatest archaeological stories of the 20th century. The ship itself is a masterpiece of ancient naval architecture, a tangible link to the lost world of the pharaohs that provides profound insight into their technological prowess and their complex beliefs about the final, cosmic voyage into eternity. The story of the discovery begins not with a grand expedition, but with a routine cleaning and survey operation on the south side of the Great Pyramid. An Egyptian architect and archaeologist named Kemal el-Malik was supervising the removal of debris that had accumulated over the centuries. As his workmen cleared the area, he noticed a long line of massive limestone blocks that seemed to form the roof of a large subterranean chamber running parallel to the pyramid's southern face. What piqued his interest was the seal between the massive blocks. It was still intact, held together with thick, ancient plaster. This suggested that whatever lay beneath had been undisturbed since the time of the pharaohs. Suspecting he had found something of immense importance, el-Malik proceeded with great care and theatrical flair. On May 26, 1954, in front of assembled officials and press, He had his team drill a small hole through one of the enormous roofing blocks. He then lowered a mirror to reflect the desert sunlight into the chamber below. What he saw was the glint of gold leaf and the unmistakable, elegant shape of a giant wooden oar. The air that rushed out of the sealed chamber, released for the first time in 4.5 millennia, carried the distinct aromatic scent of cedar wood. He had found something incredible, a buried royal ship. The process of unearthing this treasure was a monumental task in itself. The 42 massive roofing blocks, each weighing over 15 tons, had to be carefully lifted away. When the pit was finally opened to the sky, it revealed a long rectangular rock-cut chamber. Inside, disassembled into 1,224 separate pieces, but laid out in careful, logical order, was a complete ship. The wood was in an almost perfect state of preservation, a miracle of the dry, sterile desert environment. The ancient craftsman who had interred the vessel had not just haphazardly placed the pieces in the pit. They had arranged them in the exact order they would be needed for reassembly. The oars were stacked together, the planks of the hull were laid in sequence, and the ropes were neatly coiled. It was a giant sacred model kit, a set of instructions written in timber for a future reconstruction. The daunting task of reassembling this ancient, three-dimensional puzzle fell to a master restorer from the Egyptian Antiquities Service named Ahmed Youssef Mustafa. For over a decade, he painstakingly studied the pieces, documenting every notch, every carving, and every ancient mark. With no surviving manual or blueprint, he had to rely on the marks left by the original builders and his own intuitive understanding of ancient woodworking. The ship was not built in a way that would be familiar to a modern shipwright. It was constructed from the outside in, with the planks of the hull being connected to each other first, before the internal frame was added to provide rigidity. The planks were not held together with nails or pegs, but were literally stitched together with ropes made of hafa grass. These ropes were passed through thousands of V-shaped channels that had been meticulously carved into the inside faces of the planks. When the wood was placed in water, it would swell, tightening the ropes and making the hull completely watertight. It was an incredibly sophisticated and labor-intensive design, creating a strong yet flexible vessel perfectly suited for the conditions of the Nile River. When the reconstruction was finally completed, the result was stunningly beautiful. The ship measures 143 feet long and nearly 20 feet wide, a sleek and elegant vessel that is both a work of art and a marvel of engineering. It is equipped with 10 pairs of massive oars, which were likely used for steering rather than propulsion. Especially in the currents of the Nile, the ship's primary means of movement was likely being towed by smaller boats. At its center are 2 deck houses. A small, open-sided one at the front was likely the captain's cabin, or perhaps a shrine. The larger, enclosed central cabin, with its finely paneled walls and canopy, was the royal cabin, the sanctum for the king himself. The entire ship is made primarily of imported Lebanese cedar, a luxury material that demonstrates the extensive trade networks commanded by Khufu. It is the world's oldest intact planked vessel, a singular treasure of naval history that has taught us more about the high craft of ancient Egyptian shipbuilding than any other discovery. The purpose of this magnificent ship and the other 4 boat pits that have been located around Khufu's pyramid though the contents of the others were long lost to decay, has been the subject of much scholarly debate. It is commonly referred to as a solar boat or solar bark. This theory is based on the Central Egyptian belief that the reborn pharaoh would join the sun god Ra on his daily journey across the sky. Ra was believed to travel in a great ship, the Manjet bark, during the day and switch to another, the Mesaktet bark, for his dangerous nightly journey through the underworld. The ships buried beside Khufu's pyramid could be physical, full-sized models of these celestial vessels, provided for the king to take his place alongside the sun god for all eternity. The sleek, elegant lines of the ship, which seem almost too delicate for the open sea, support this idea of a symbolic, magical vessel designed for a celestial ocean. Another prominent theory suggests a more practical, terrestrial purpose. The boat could have been a funerary bark, a ship that was actually used during the king's funeral ceremonies. It may have been the very vessel that carried the pharaoh's body, his sarcophagus, and the funeral procession on its final journey across the Nile from the royal palace at Memphis on the east bank to the valley temple at Giza on the west bank, the land of the dead. After its use in this final sacred procession, the ship itself became sacred and was ritually killed by being disassembled and buried next to the king it had served. This would explain its perfect condition, as it would have only been used once. A third possibility is that it was simply the king's personal yacht, a pleasure barge that he used for travel and religious pilgrimages along the Nile during his lifetime. Upon his death, it was buried with him so that he could continue to enjoy these earthly pleasures in the next world, just as he was buried with food, furniture, and other personal possessions. It is, of course, entirely possible that the ship served all these functions simultaneously in the Egyptian mind. It could have been a real working vessel used by the king in life, which then served as his funerary bark, and was finally intended to be magically transformed into a solar bark for his eternal journey, with Radat in 2011, a second unopened boat pit on the south side of the pyramid was investigated. It, too, contained a disassembled ship. This vessel is currently undergoing a long and painstaking process of excavation and restoration by a team of Japanese and Egyptian experts using the latest conservation science. Early indications are that it is slightly smaller than the first boat, but of a similar design. The study of this second vessel will undoubtedly reveal even more secrets about the craft of the ancient shipwrights. The Khufu boat is a treasure that transcends its physical form. It is a time capsule, carrying within its cedar planks the very scent of the ancient world. It is a testament to the incredible skill of the artisans who built it and the profound belief system that motivated its creation. It represents the ultimate voyage, a journey from the mortal realm of the living to the celestial realm of the gods, and it remains one of the most personal and powerful links we have to the great Pharaoh, who built a mountain to house his soul. The age of discovery at the pyramids is far from over. While the romantic and often destructive era of clearing sand with dynamite and blasting through passages has given way to a more careful, ethical, and scientific approach, the quest to uncover the secrets of these ancient monuments is more active and exciting than ever before. Today, the treasure hunters are not seeking gold, but data. They are armed not with shovels and pickaxes, but with cosmic ray detectors, ground-penetrating radar, infrared thermography, and sophisticated robotics. The new frontiers of pyramid exploration are pushing the boundaries of science and technology, and they are revealing that these 4,500-year-old structures still have profound and surprising secrets to share with a world that is finally developing the tools to listen to them. For decades, modern Egyptology has embraced non-invasive techniques to study the pyramids. The primary goal is to see inside the structures without moving a single stone to preserve their irreplaceable integrity while unlocking their deepest secrets. In the late 1980s, a French team used microgravimetry, a technique that measures tiny variations in the force of gravity to detect areas of lower or higher density to search for hidden chambers in the Great Pyramid. The survey detected some anomalies, including a potential hidden passage behind the wall of the Grand Gallery, but the results were ultimately inconclusive, and the technology of the time was limited in its resolution. The first major breakthrough in modern robotic exploration came in 1993, when German robotics engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a small, wheeled robot named Aput II, Opener of the Ways, in ancient Egyptian, up one of the mysterious, narrow shafts leading from the Queen's chamber in the Great Pyramid. The world watched in fascination as the robot, no bigger than a shoebox, crawled slowly up the 8-inch square shaft, transmitting video from its tiny camera. After a journey of over 200 feet into the very heart of the pyramid's mass, it came to a halt. Its path was blocked by a small, polished limestone slab with 2 elegant copper fittings, which looked for all the world like handles on a miniature door. The discovery was sensational. What lay behind this Gantenbrink's door? Was it the entrance to a secret chamber? In 2002, a follow-up mission, sponsored by the National Geographic Society, used a new robot called the Pyramid Rover to drill a small hole through the door. A fiber optic camera was pushed through, only to reveal a small, empty space, and then another, rougher door just beyond it. The mystery only deepened. These shafts, once dismissed as being for ventilation, are now central to the ongoing investigation. The leading theory is that they served a symbolic religious purpose, acting as star shafts or conduits for the king's soul to ascend to the heavens. The copper fittings have been interpreted by some as symbolic handles for the king's soul, to pull the door open, or as models of the bolts used to secure temple shrines. The exploration of these shafts continues with each new robotic mission, like the Jetty project, employing more advanced technology, hoping to finally solve the riddle of the doors, the most revolutionary new frontier in pyramid exploration. However, is cosmic ray radiography. This cutting-edge technique sounds like science fiction, but its principle is remarkably simple. The Earth is constantly being bombarded by high-energy cosmic rays from outer space. When these rays hit the upper atmosphere, they create a shower of secondary subatomic particles, including particles called muons. Muons are similar to electrons but are about 200 times more massive. They rain down on the Earth's surface constantly, and because of their high energy, they can pass through hundreds of feet of solid objects, including stone. However, their trajectory is slightly deflected when they pass through denser material. By placing highly sensitive muon detectors in and around a pyramid, scientists can track the paths of millions of muons over a period of many months. By analyzing the final trajectories, they can create a three-dimensional map of the pyramid's internal density. Areas where more muons get through are less dense, indicating a possible void or chamber. Areas where fewer muons get through are denser, indicating solid stone. It is the equivalent of giving the pyramid a giant passive X-ray or CT scan without using any artificial or harmful radiation. In 2015, a major international project called Scan Pyramids was launched, bringing together a multidisciplinary team of experts from Egypt, France, Japan, and Canada. They deployed a variety of non-invasive technologies, with muon radiography being the centerpiece of their investigation into the Great Pyramid. The results have been nothing short of spectacular. In 2016, the team announced the discovery of a previously unknown corridor on the north face of the pyramid, located behind the massive stone chevrons that sit above the original entrance. This north face corridor, as it's been named, is about 30 feet long and is still being investigated. It may have been part of the construction process, or another feature designed to relieve weight from the entrance passage below. But the truly groundbreaking announcement came in late 2017. The Scan Pyramids team revealed that they had discovered a massive, previously unknown void deep within the pyramid. This void, located directly above the magnificent Grand Gallery, is enormous, at least 100 feet long, and with a cross-section similar in size to the Grand Gallery itself. The discovery, published in the prestigious scientific journal Nature, stunned the worlds of archaeology and physics. The existence of such a large structural feature had been completely unsuspected for 4,500 years. This big void, or Scan Pyramids void, is the first major structural discovery inside the Great Pyramid since the 19th century. The purpose of this great void is, for now, a complete mystery, and it has sparked intense debate among experts. The scientific team has been careful not to call it a chamber, as its function is entirely unknown. It could be a structural feature, another brilliant engineering trick like the relieving chambers above the king's chamber, designed to distribute the immense weight of the pyramid's apex and protect the fragile, corbelled roof of the Grand Gallery below. This is a very plausible and, from an engineering standpoint, elegant theory. Another theory proposed by the team that discovered it is that it might be a second Grand Gallery, part of a separate internal ramp system used to haul blocks during construction. The French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin has long argued that the pyramid was built using a massive internal ramp that corkscrews up the inside of the structure, and he believes the void may be a key part of this system. Of course, there is also the most tantalizing possibility of all, that it is a hidden chamber, a secret storage place for the king's real, undisturbed funerary treasure, deliberately sealed off and left out of the main path to the known burial chamber to fool any potential tomb robbers. The next great challenge is to explore this void. How can we see inside it without damaging the pyramid? The team is now working on developing new generations of miniature, intelligent robots. One concept is to drill a tiny, 1-inch hole and insert a blimp-like robot that could inflate inside the void and fly around, or a swarm of small, crawling robots that could map the space. The exploration of the Great Pyramid has become a showcase for the future of archaeology, a perfect marriage of ancient history and cutting-edge robotics and particle physics. The work continues, not just at Giza, but across all of Egypt's pyramid fields. These ancient monuments are not dead relics of a lost world. They are active archaeological sites, dynamic puzzles that continue to challenge us. The hidden treasures we seek today are not of gold, but of knowledge. And the greatest secret of all may be that after 4,500 years, the pyramids still have the power to inspire us to push the boundaries of science and exploration in our unending quest to understand our own past. Our long journey through the hidden treasures and secret places of the pyramids has now reached its end. We have traveled from the simple mudbrick mastabas of the first dynasties to the colossal, star-lined peaks of Giza. We have delved into the silent, inscribed walls of a king's burial chamber and explored the bustling, forgotten city of the workers who built them. Through it all, we have seen that the true treasures of these iconic monuments are not the glittering artifacts of gold and lapis lazuli that were plundered from them long ago, but the far more valuable and enduring treasures of knowledge, of human ingenuity, and of a complex and profound spiritual vision that they continue to reveal to us across the millennia. We began by uncovering the secret of their origin, not as a sudden invention, but as a gradual evolution of belief in architecture. We traced the brilliant conceptual leap made by the genius Imhotep, who, in a flash of inspiration, transformed the simple mastaba into a mighty stone stairway to the heavens for his king, Djoser. The step pyramid was a revolution, a blueprint for eternity that his successors, most notably the great builder Sneferu, would spend a century perfecting through heroic feats of trial and error. In the shadow of the collapsed pyramid at Medum and the distinctive bent pyramid at Ashur, we found a hidden treasure of knowledge, the hard-won engineering experience that was the necessary prelude to the perfection of Giza. At Giza itself, we explored the ultimate expression of this knowledge. We saw not just 3 individual tombs, but a single, unified necropolis, a symphony in stone where the pyramids of 3 generations of a single family were laid out as a cosmic map. This sacred landscape was an engine of resurrection, meticulously designed to launch the souls of the god-kings from their earthly home to their celestial destination among the stars. We ventured deep inside the Great Pyramid of Khufu, a mountain of mysteries, and found not empty rooms, but a treasure of architectural complexity, the soaring Grand Gallery. The enigmatic star shafts aimed at the heavens, the clever relieving, chambers that protected the king's sanctum, and now the great silent void, a new and profound secret waiting to be explored by a new generation of scientists. We stood before the silent guardian, the great Sphinx, and understood that its treasure was not a hidden library, but its potent symbolism, a fusion of royal authority and leonine power, eternally watching over the sacred precinct. We dug in the sands south of the plateau and unearthed one of the most important treasures of all, the human story of the pyramid builders. We dismantled the age-old myth of slavery and replaced it with the vibrant reality of a skilled, well-fed, and respected workforce of free Egyptians. They lived, worked, celebrated, and were honorably buried in the shadow of the monuments they helped to create. Their city and their tombs are a testament to their humanity and their central role in this great national project, a treasure of social history that redefines how we view this ancient civilization. We then turn to the intellectual treasures of the pyramids. In the so-called forgotten pyramids of the later Old Kingdom, we found their inner walls covered in a library of magic, the sacred spells of the pyramid texts. These ancient hieroglyphs, the oldest religious texts in the world, gave a voice to the silent tombs, revealing the complex rituals and beliefs surrounding the king's perilous journey through the underworld and his ultimate transformation into an eternal, celestial god. We uncovered the darker secrets of the pyramids, the shadow narrative of the tomb robbers who, for 4,000 years, pitted their ingenuity against that of the pyramid builders. In their chilling confessions, we found a hidden history of crime, corruption, and pragmatism, a reminder that human greed was often as powerful as religious reverence. And we marveled at the discovery of Khufu's solar boat, a treasure not of gold, but of wood and rope, a perfectly preserved vessel that speaks of the final, sacred voyage from the world of the living to the realm of the gods, a testament to the Dynasty, highest levels of ancient craftsmanship. Finally, we saw how the quest for knowledge continues today with an intensity that rivals that of the original builders. Modern scientists and archaeologists are using cosmic rays and robotics to probe the last remaining secrets of the pyramids, proving that these ancient monuments are not static relics of a lost world. They are active archaeological sites, dynamic puzzles that continue to challenge us. They inspire us to innovate, to collaborate across cultures and disciplines, and to push the boundaries of science and exploration. The pyramids teach us that a treasure does not have to glitter to be priceless. It can be a fragment of a papyrus that illuminates the workings of a temple. It can be a tool from a worker's tomb that speaks of a life of labor. It can be a spell carved in stone that reveals a hope for eternity. Or it can be a newly discovered void in a 4,500-year-old monument that deepens the mystery and reminds you that there is always more to learn. They stand as the ultimate symbol of a civilization's ambition, a testament to the enduring power of a shared belief to move mountains. They are a treasure of humanity, and their greatest secret is that they will continue to inspire our wonder for millennia to come.